All right, welcome to, ooh, that's really loud. Let me turn that down a little bit. Is that better? Yeah, okay. Being that our world gets so divided, I love putting that video on. Just remember how we can do stuff together if we want to, if we can. All right, thanks for coming tonight. We're going to start just with a little time of worship, but because of COVID, we're not going to be singing together like we oftentimes would do, so we're going to have just sort of a quiet meditation thing, but it's such a beautiful night. Who knows what today is meteorologically? Anyone? Spring equinox, which means the sunlight and darkness are the same amount today. So we want to go outside and soak in the fall equinox, all right? So tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go out and we're going to go on the labyrinth, which is right out here, for 25 points. Who knows the difference between a labyrinth and a maze? What do you think, Allie? Okay, a maze, a labyrinth can be something spiritual, whereas a maze is made out of corn. All right, whatever. But there's another difference. What do you think? So a maze, you can get lost a little more easily. You're not going to get lost in here. One of the things is a maze has dead ends, and you can get lost, and it take a while to find your way out. A labyrinth only has one path, and so you can't get lost. You can see where you're going anyway, but there's no dead ends. And so what we're going to do, we're going to get out, and we're going to see whether we can do this in silence. And we can. I know we can do that. So we're going to get there single file, and I need someone to be the leader. Who's going to be the leader? Who's fearless? All right, there's my leader. All right, so, and we're gonna just follow 2 steps behind the person in front of you until we all are in the labyrinth. All right, so let's head out there. All right. Go ahead and open the doors there. All right, we're gonna start out here, guys. All right, great. Let me talk just about some events that are coming up soon. Next week we'll have our regular gathering like this. The week after that, Christy's got a special event planned. I'm not sure what it is yet. Just come prepared to maybe be outside. And be prepared every Wednesday until it gets too cold to be outside, that we're going to spend some time outside each Wednesday. The date I want to have you guys think about, remember, is October 16th. All right, that's a little less than a month from now. We have two special events going on, and one is called Shantytown, which is an experience where we come and we build, everyone gets to build a shelter out in the parking lot, and we spend the night in the parking lot here. It's one of the ways that we try to begin to understand what it might be like for people who are homeless, who don't have a place to stay. So you need to find some cardboard, and then we'll help you construct something. We'll stay overnight and talk about what does that mean, maybe to be homeless. And Christy made a little video, or actually this is one we made back in 2016, I think. Shantytown. All right, yeah. So it'll give you a clue what it looks like a little bit.
Shopping cart, looking for a bite to eat, talking to the air. Keep your eyes in front of you, keep him just outside your view. It's easier to walk on by pretending you don't see. But we have been called to more than this. We have been shown a greater love. So just remember, someone else, they can do much more. We have been called to more than this, and we haven't shown a greater love. So just remember, maybe the stranger in your eyes could be an angel in disguise.
Right, so start thinking creatively, maybe find some cardboard boxes and things like that. Going to create something as a group or on your own, or bring a tent. But it's one of the, for a lot of kids to talk to, it's one of the highlights of the year to be able to do this. The other event that's happening is also on the same day. So Saturday morning, we're making apple pies. Saturday night is when we stay overnight, when we build our structures. It starts after supper time, goes through the evening, and then we'll be here on Sunday morning greeting people as they have to walk through our tent city or our cardboard box city to come into worship. But in the morning, we're making apple pies that we use to raise funds for Malawi. Malawi is a really small country in southern Africa. And the money that we make from making pies helps them. They're still very much, I think they've only got about, I think the last time I saw was less than 10% of the people vaccinated in Malawi. And so COVID is just still really ravaging their country. And so we're trying to send as much help as we can to them. But here's a picture just of making apple pies, raising money for Malawi. So you get all the apples, we got to peel all the apples, we got to cut them up, then we put together the crusts and the fillings and all the stuff that goes into it. So. Well, you guys have grown up a little bit from these pictures. All right, so what day are we doing these two events? October 16th. So we talked about requirements for doing service events and also big group events. This is one of each. You can get most of your requirements done for the whole year of confirmation in one day, October 16th, coming up. So there's a sign-up sheet right as you came in. If you're interested in doing that, put your names down, and so we can start planning for that. All right, there's also a sign up there for the youth gathering event. It's coming in July, so next summer, but we're going to have to register this fall. It's a great event, happens once every 3 years, and so we'll talk more about that in a coming week. But I need Allie Tabayan to come forward for a minute. Allie, where are you? Please come here. I'd like to present you with this lollipop because you were the very first person to turn in a worship note. Woohoo! All right, so this is what a worship note looks like. You pick one like this and you make it look like this. So you just fill in, it's got 5 easy questions. What special events were part of worship? What was the basic message? What part was most meaningful to you and why? Any highs or lows or prayer concerns you want to share, and then anything else. So there's a little, right outside there's a little tray that's got blank ones. Take the blank one out of the top, fill it out, and put it in the one underneath. All right? So good job. Thank you very much, Allie, for getting one in. We will see. I will have candy next week as well. So we'll see how much should I bring? Are you guys going to do one before then? I'll bring a bunch of candy. So see how many we can get in by next Wednesday. All right. We talked about last week of giving everyone having Bibles. If the 10th graders here, how many of you have found your Bible that you used a couple years ago? Yay, very good. For 8th and 9th graders, they're back ordered, so we're waiting for some more to come in. Hopefully by next week, we will be able to hand them out to you. So we don't have Bibles to use this week, but we will get there eventually. So tonight we're going to spend some time, about 20 minutes here as a large group, and then we're going to spend the rest of our time into our small groups. We're going to break into 6 small groups where we'll have some chance just to get to know each other, check in a little bit, talk about our hopes, for the year. I want to begin tonight, though, with some of the questions you guys filled out last week to get started with. And they covered the whole range of things like who God is and what heaven is like and other religions. And so we're going to get to all those. But what I want to start with was one that was, I think, pretty important. Someone says, well, what does it mean to be confirmed? Which if you're spending a whole year doing this, we should know what that means or what it's for. So some of you were baptized here in this building. If you were baptized here, raise your hand. Let me see how many of you know that. All right? How many of you have no idea where you were baptized, or even if you are? All right? Most of us were pretty little when it happened. Unless someone has told us the story, we may not even know anything at all about our baptism. But typically, when a young person is baptized, and some of you were baptized as older, you weren't babies. You can be baptized at any age. But for those who are baptized as real young, part of what your parents do is they make a promise. They say, "We promise we're going to teach this child what faith is all about." Now, not all churches do this. Some people they wait and baptize someone when they're old enough to understand and take responsibility for their lives. We say we've got good adults and people who can teach faith really well, and so we say let's baptize early on, as babies even, and then we'll promise that we're going to help them learn what faith is about. And when they get older, when they're 8th, 9th, 10th grade years, we're going to give them an opportunity to confirm what we did. When they were baptized, we said, we believe in God. Now, we're going to wait a few years and then give them a chance to say that for themselves. Do they agree with what we did? They didn't have any choice when you were baptized. Now you have a choice. You're going to come and you can say, I will ask a question. I'll say, is it your intention to continue on this path? And you can say yes with the help of God, or you can say no, thank you. But for those who want to be confirmed, this process that we're going through for a couple of years is helping you understand what faith means. So I might understand whether I want to do this or not, to try to take this next step. When I was growing up, you had to be confirmed before you could take communion. So that was one of these they held out there. So can't take communion until you get confirmed. Today you can start taking communion, as a 3rd grader, 4th grader. There's no magic age for that, and there's really no special privilege you get by being confirmed. I suppose you can vote, but that's not a big deal for most of you to be able to vote in an annual meeting. For me, the most important part about confirmation is it becomes a milestone. Sometimes we need to measure how we've grown, how we've changed. Maybe some of you at your house have a growth chart, or like on little lines on a door or something like that, and every year they make a mark. You can see, when I was in 2nd grade, I was this tall, and now I'm this tall, and now I'm this tall, now I'm this tall. And you can measure, you can look back and say, I used to be there, now I've grown. And we talk about milestones that help mark the journey we're on. And for me, confirmation becomes this milestone, this mark that we can look and say, I used to be at this point in my life, in my spiritual life, and now I'm here. Now, this is not the end of the story. I'm going to continue to grow and do things, but it's a way of pausing, seeing where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. Now, for some families, that becomes sort of the end of the journey. Sometimes kids get confirmed and parents say, okay, I've done my duty, I'm done. And they check out and I never see them again. Other people are here every week, and they come around, they teach Sunday school and they help with Vacation Bible School, and they come here every Wednesday night and they have supper, they stay involved in the life of the congregation. And that's what the goal is, that the confirmation is not the end, doesn't mark the end of something, but rather the beginning of something where you take that more responsibility for yourselves. At some point, you're going to decide at this point, you probably have to work it out with your parents. Are we going to go to church or not? At some point, that decision is going to be completely up to you. And you're going to have to decide, is this something I want in my life or not? Is this something meaningful? Is this something that helps or not? Our job is to try to give you the kind of tools to make an informed decision about if this is something you want as part of your life. I like to use language of talking about faith formation. That faith is not just stuff that we memorize or learn, but I'll talk about faith as a relationship, all right? And that's one of the things at the end of confirmation, each of you are going to write a faith statement. And you often tell, it says, if you don't remember anything else from the whole 2 years or 3 years, however long it takes you to do confirmation, if you remember this, that might be enough. That faith is a relationship. It's not about knowing stuff. It's about having a relationship with God and a relationship with people of God. That somehow we become part of a community that nurtures us, that helps us explore this relationship that we have with God. To me, that is what faith is, right? Is that kind of relationship, what we do to help with that. So my goal is for you to somehow experience God, and whether it's on a mission trip, or whether it's in our Wednesday nights, or whether it's in your small group, or when it's you're sleeping in a cardboard box out in the parking lot, that somehow we're going to have some experiences along the way where you know that you are loved, that you experience grace, and that's going to happen through your parents, and teachers, and extended family, and guides, and mentors, and youth directors, and pastors. Some of it will happen when you're here. Other times it may happen on trips or who knows where. So that's sort of what we're about. That's why we're gathering and doing this. Okay, let's get some of your other questions. A real basic one, who's God? All right, it's a good question to ask. Every culture, every society for millennium have asked that question and answered it in different ways. It gets back to there's an awareness that everyone has that there's something bigger than ourselves. Now, when you were little babies, and some of you maybe remember have younger brothers and sisters, and when you're a little baby, it's all about you. You don't care whether you're keeping your mom or dad up. You're just crying, because you want your diaper changed or you want to eat something or whatever. Your whole life is just about you. As we get older, we learn that we have to consider other people. Or that we say, well, why am I here? What is my purpose in life? And when we get to that point where we can start asking these bigger, broader questions, our world has expanded, we often then say, well, how does God fit into that? Who is God? Where does God come from? Some people do it in sort of a generic sense. They'll simply talk about there being a higher power. Other people are very specific about who they understand God to be. We say, the way that I understand God is through the person called Jesus. And everything in between. People are going to have lots of different ways in which we understand who God is. Sometimes if there's a big storm, and did anyone have any, like the big branches blow down the other night from trees in your yard or something? Yeah. Sometimes the insurance company, a big tree falls on your car or something, they'll say, well, it was an act of God. All right? Now, I don't believe God went out there and pushed the tree over under your car. But sometimes if there's something that we say there are forces that are out of our control, we oftentimes refer to that as an act of God, because we understand there's some things that we can't control. Now, we know weather patterns, and back in the old days, if there's a big storm, they might say, oh, that was God being angry with us. Now we can say, no, it's a low pressure thing, hit some moisture coming up from the Gulf Stream, created a storm and a downdraft, and we can explain all kinds of things of how a storm happens. But part of it is to say there are still things that are out of our control, and sometimes that becomes into a different realm that we recognize is something that's beyond us. Now, there's lots of different religions that try to get a handle on these mysteries and wrestle with the why questions. And one of the big questions you guys came up with is, why do bad things happen to good people? And next week, that's going to be one of our major questions we look at. Have you guys in history yet looked at like Greek mythology, different gods and goddesses and stuff like that? We look at cultures who are trying to understand why do things happen, why do people do what they do, and they developed all these stories about gods and goddesses to tell those kinds of stories. And so thousands of years ago, people, if they didn't understand something, they would attribute it to God. Now, for us, we understand much more now. We use science and different kinds of things to try to get at stuff. But the reality is that behind all of this, there still is this deep mystery of something that that we know is God, right? Even though we can't explain it all. I've been studying God and doing theology stuff for over 60 years here, and so I'm still figuring out stuff about God. It humbles us when we realize that we don't know all the answers. You won't be confirmed because you know all the answers. You might learn how to ask better questions, but knowing the answers is not necessarily what's going to be the result of this. Sometimes we ask the question, how do we know if something is real? Right? If I'm going to invest this much time, how do I know that this God thing is something that's real? Well, how do we know that anything is real? Right? We have our own personal experiences. We have evidence that we can examine. We can talk with other people that we find trustworthy and see what was your experience. But there's some things that we can see or experience with our senses, and other things that we can't. Someone asked Jesus about what does it mean to be in a relationship with God, and Jesus says, it's like the wind, right? You can see that the wind is affecting things. It blows. You can see the trees move. We can see the dust that the wind picks up. We can feel it blowing on our face, but we can't see it. We can't grasp it. There's something mysterious about that. And Jesus said that's sort of how the Spirit of God works in our lives. And people look at events differently. Right? Some people can say something happens to them, and someone can say, well, I was lucky. Someone else could have the same thing happen to them, and they say, no, I was blessed. They say there's something more going on than simply random stuff in our lives. And that gets back to how we understand who God is and how God is active and how God isn't active. And we'll talk about that more next week. A lot of times when we talk about proving something, we talk about scientific method, right? We raise a question, we create a hypothesis, we do some testing to see whether it's right or not, and then we decide whether this is something that's real or not. But science has its limits as well, right? And we know that things that we knew for sure, I mean, when I was your age, I knew for sure that there were 9 planets in our solar system, right? That was a fact. It was proven, it was in my textbook. Nowadays, there's 8, all right? The facts changed, science changed, and we're always discovering new things that we thought were unknowable. All of a sudden now we know differently. And that's going to be how faith works as well. There were things when I was your age I thought I knew for sure that as time has gone on, I've grown, I've changed, I've developed with that. And so in calling you to, inviting you into this journey of faith, I don't want you to believe something just because I said so. And if I said, do you believe in God? And I say, yes, I believe in God because Pastor Steve said I have to, or I should, or something like that. I don't want you to believe because I or any other authority figure tell you should. What I want you to do is investigate for yourselves. I want you to test things out. If you're going to trust something, I want you to make sure that it is trustworthy. And so we're going to invite you into this process that you're not going to be done with it by the time you're confirmed, but hopefully you're going to get on the path for this. You're going to spend probably this next 10 years of your life really examining and learning what is trustworthy and what isn't. And part of that is we're going to give you the tools to be able to do that. One of the things that I liked doing with our youth group I had at church before that is we would go rappelling, like going over cliffs, and we would go camping. We'd do that, and we'd get strap-on harnesses, and we just back over a cliff and go rappelling down the side of it. Has anyone done that? Anyone gone rappelling yet? Oh, okay. So it's a big thing. It's a powerful experience because you stand on a cliff. You're 125 feet over the top. You strap on your harness and you put a rope, and then the guy who's going to belay you down the rope, he says, "All right, I got you. Go ahead and step over the cliff." All right. Now, the only reason you will do that is if you trust that person. You have to trust the equipment. If not, it would just be stupid to step over a 125-foot cliff. But it's an amazing experience. It's almost like being weightless. As you step off and you realize, I can control my descent by my position of my arm. You kick off, you bounce out, you let the rope go out and just sort of float out there, sort of weightless, bounce back into the cliff, and you work your way down. Now, we don't start out on a 125-foot cliff. We start on a hill, and you walk down the hill backwards with a rope and recognizing I can stop myself anytime I want. And then you go a little steeper. So we're not going to ask you to, I'm not asking anyone to go off the edge of a cliff right now. I'm saying let's start trusting small things, learning that, and then we can go into bigger things that we can do that. All right, so on a basic level, when we talk about God, we're talking about something that is bigger than ourselves. Everyone believes in something. Now, we may not all call it God, but there's some principle that we use to organize our life, to make sense out of life, to find purpose in it. For some people, it's just selfishness. For some people, it's money, it's power. There's different things that people are going to choose to organize their life around. We're going to invite you to say, what would it be like if I organized my life around principles of faith, about how God wants me to live? When I was a kid, I thought that God, and maybe you guys did this too, I thought God was like us, only he had superpowers, all right? I had seen pictures of God. He looked like a white robe and a long beard, and he could throw down thunderbolts and lived on a cloud and stuff like that. That's just artists making cartoons and stuff like that. That's not what the Bible talks about. And so we're going to talk about what's the God that the Bible actually talks about. And I used to think God was up there controlling everything, like he had a little PlayStation controller and he was making me jump or move or go backwards or forwards or do that. And so if someone got sick with cancer, I'd say, well, God made him get cancer. Or someone got COVID, I'd say, well, God sent COVID to teach us a lesson or something like that. Or a hurricane struck, and someone's house was destroyed. We say, well, God must have wanted that to happen. Now, I don't believe that at all anymore. I used to think that. I think, and we'll talk about that next week a little bit more, but I don't think God is not in the business of trying to control everything. The other thing I used to think, I thought that the only thing God was really concerned about was getting people to go to heaven or sending people who messed up to hell. That it was all about sorting people out for the afterlife, as opposed to what I'm doing right now. And what I did now was only important because it determined what will happen when I die. I look at life differently now, and we'll talk about that as well. How those ideas that I had when I was your age or growing up have undergone some changes as I've learned what faith is all about. So, people are going to have lots of different ideas about who God is. About 5 minutes here, we're going to break into some small groups. But before we do that, I just want to show you one more quick little video here talking about where do we see or understand who God is.
Evidence of God. That's how we can believe in a God we cannot see or hear or touch. If we will open our eyes, we'll see His work is all around us. Every mountain, every valley, Your creation, it surrounds me. Every breath I breathe, every heartbeat, every sunrise that You give to me. Every blue sky, every starry night, paint a picture we cannot deny. Like a warm rain in the summertime, like a first kiss or a baby's cry. These and so much more tell a story we cannot ignore. The evidence of God.
In our Christian tradition, we say that God is uncreated. Someone asks, where did God come from, or who made God? We say, when we talk about God, we're outside the realms of physical time and space. For us, there's a beginning, there's an end. You can only be in one place at a time. In time, we can't move back and forth in time. When we talk about God, we're moving beyond time and space. We talk about God being eternal, uncreated, existing before there was anything. It's sort of mind-numbing to try to think about that. There's a verse that you'll read it again when you get into your small group time, but let me read it for you once here before we send you to small group. It talks about this. How do we wrap our minds around a God who is beyond time and space? And it goes like this. It says, Christ is the visible image of an invisible God. All right? The visible image of an invisible God. He existed before anything was created, is supreme over all creation. Through Him, God created everything in the heavenly realms and on earth. He made the things we can see, and He made the things we cannot see. Thrones and kingdoms, rulers, authorities of the unseen world. Everything was created through Him and for Him. He existed before anything else, and He holds all creation together. I think that's a wonderful beginning point to say, what is this mystery of God all about? All right, so next week we're going to talk about why bad things happen to good people, talk about heaven, hell, how all that stuff works. But we're going to move into small group time. We're going to give you a little bit more time just so we need to get to know each other a little bit. When we're done, we're going to ask you to return and come up here, the font where we have this, and we're going to use these words, you belong to God, we belong to each other. So we're going to dismiss small groups one at a time. We invite you to go find a place to meet. When you're all done, we'll come back here. So start out with 10th grade girls. 10th grade girls. 10th grade girls, who's your leader? Oh, Jenny, right there. All right, 10th grade girls. Find a room anywhere you want. You get first dibs. So, yeah, those of you who are in 10th grade now. All right, find a room. That'll sort of claim that for yourself. 10th grade boys. All right. Right back here, follow your leader. You guys can find a spot to meet. We have we have the library. We've got the blue room down there, green room. There's a room down by the bathrooms down there. Or they can be in here if you want. Let's go 9th grade girls. Who's got 9th grade girls? All right, 9th grade boys. Going with Shay. All right. 9th grade boys. 8th grade girls. All right. And that leaves the 9th grade, or the 8th grade boys. All right. Your fearless leaders are right back, waiting for you out there. Now, if you can't find a room, you can come back in here. You can use this space if you want as well. Wherever you want to go, find a quiet spot, go outside, whatever you want to do.